As promised, please be joined right now by Thomas Christopher. He's the owner of the League Winners. He was at Syracuse's Pro Day yesterday inside the Ensley Center, and he joins us now. Thomas, before we get into Pro Day, before we get into this Syracuse draft class, tell us about the League Winners. What are you guys all about?
Yeah, absolutely. We started as a fantasy football company. Last year, I kind of flipped the script a little bit and decided to go into pure football. Have experience of that in the past with the Jets. So we started doing college football last year, got credentialed for a few schools. And now this year we're about, I think at 15 schools we have credentials for. And we're just, keep trying to put the player first and promote the players as much as we can in the process of doing so.
All right, so you were at Pro Day yesterday. 14 Syracuse players working out, a handful of other players from local colleges as well, including the five guys who attended the NFL Draft Combine from Syracuse. McCord, Gadsden, LaQuinn Allen was there, Elijah Clark, Fadil Diggs. Those are the five that went to the Combine. What stood out to you from Pro Day yesterday?
Honestly, man, it was Marlo Wax. I think he kind of took the whole thing by storm. I mean, I had him hand-timed as a 4.51 40-yard dash, and I'm pretty sure that would have him at third place among linebackers. He did great in drills too. His footwork was just, no wasted movements. He did a really good job in the drilling portions of the event as well. I think he really took it by storm. And then, of course, Kyle McCord on his on-air drills and passing, that was the highlight for most people's days. And I mean, McCord was money, man. He was throwing the ball 40+ yards downfield, hitting guys in stride. It was just a great showcase for a lot of the Syracuse players, honestly.
You bring up Marlo Wax, and he's an interesting guy, right? Because he came into his last year at Syracuse, had a chance to become one of, I believe, three players all time at SU to lead the team in tackles 3 straight years, and then he ended up getting hurt, and it interrupted his final year. And then we find out yesterday that he was playing at like 55-60% for the rest of the season. Sounds like he's healthy now. As you said, did a really nice job running the 40. We look at him in Syracuse and we see Zaire Franklin, who is a similar type of player, right? Middle linebacker, went to the pros amid not much fanfare, found a spot as a special teamer, did really well with that, got some spot duty as a linebacker, and now, all these years later, he's, the leading tackler in the league. Do you think Marlo Wax could follow a similar path to that of Zaire Franklin, get a crack with somebody as a special teamer, and then kind of prove himself that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he can have that kind of trajectory in his career. I mean, you just got to look at the kid's work ethic, his character. A lot of guys, when they're hurt like that, they don't want to come back in their final year, come back at like 40%. And arguably he had, better pass rushing stats than he had, in the rest of his collegiate career. And while he was playing, Elijah Clark said he saw him at 55% throughout the year. So I think there's a real chance, given his work ethic and given what his production can be that we've seen in college, I think there's definitely a possibility that he can follow in those footsteps.
You brought up Kyle McCord. Let's go there next. He's kind of the headliner of this class, right? And we've seen his stock skyrocket from where it was in August and September to where it is now. Led the country in passing yards, went to the East-West Shrine Bowl, was on the all-practice team there, went to the Combine, had a very good performance there, and continues to impress every step of the way. What do you think is his ceiling, Thomas, in terms of where he will be drafted? Do you think he's a day 2 guy? Could he be an early day 2 guy? What do you see as his ceiling being?
I think he should be a day 2 guy. Unfortunately, I was there at the Pitt game where he did throw those 5 interceptions, and I think that soured some people. But everything that he's done after that has kind of shown that he can be the guy. He did great throughout the rest of the year. He really impressed at the Shrine Bowl. He threw well at the Combine, and he threw incredibly at the Pro Day as well. I think he should be considered a day 2 guy. I think a lot of it will be considered. I know this is going to sound a little weird. I think a lot kind of hinges on what happens with Jackson Dart. There's a lot of talk about him being potentially a first-round guy, and then there's other talk of him being a midday 2 guy. I think if you see Dart kind of move up into that first round, I think you'll see McCord kind of follow suit. And if I think you see Dart kind of fall back a little bit, I think it doesn't bode as well for McCord, although I don't think that should be the case.
Before I came over here today, I mentioned to Paulie that, we were doing kind of a pro day recap yesterday, and one of the topics that came up was on Oronde Gadsden and whether or not he's a big slot guy in the NFL or if he is, truly a tight end. What do you see Oronde Gadsden, what position do you see him playing and thriving at the next level?
Personally, I see him as a big slot guy. When I talked to him at the Shrine Bowl, he was pretty adamant that he does want to play tight end at the next level. And we all know this. Tight end is a position that usually takes a couple years to develop, even for the guys that played strictly tight end throughout the collegiate career. So it'll be interesting to see if he decides to go that route. If he goes that route, I think he'll have a lot of success. But I think if he wants to have immediate success in the NFL, I think he should be in that big slot role, because I don't know too many safeties, nickel cornerbacks or linebackers that can really cover a guy that big moving that fast.
How about LaQuint Allen? You look at his size, just 6 foot, but as we saw, the last few years and this year in particular, I mean, he is strong. He could be a beast when he needs to be. Very good pass catcher out of the backfield as well. Is he just a third down back in the NFL? Do you think he could potentially be more than that?
I do think he can be more than that. He has good size on him. He has the determination. I think his mental factor, especially after all the stuff that happened, I think that plays a big role too. A lot that goes into success in football is a player's want, and I think that LaQuint really wants to prove that he is more than just, a third down specialist. Now, I think that'll help him get on the field, to start his NFL career. But then I think that he can be projected into a, multiple down guy as long as he, stays on his P's and Q's. I don't think that should be an issue. He looked great at the pro day too, running incredibly quick in and out of his routes. He looked fantastic.
Fadil Diggs looked good yesterday as well. It showed his strength, right, with the bench press. Showed his speed in the 40-yard dash. Great combination. What do you make of Fadil Diggs, and how high do you think he can go?
Man, honestly, Diggs is one of my favorite players in the draft class. I mean, his bench reps, I think it would have been eighth among edge rushers with the 26 that he had. That's incredible. He's a very deceptively fast guy for how big he is too. You don't really see people that fast, but more importantly, when it comes to Diggs, I really, really love his football IQ. Like he's very versatile. Although he doesn't play as much in coverage, he can do the coverage stuff. He did it at the Shrine Bowl, which really stood out to a lot of scouts there. But not only that, his pass rushing ability, it really flies under the radar. I think he's a guy that should sneak up into the very early day 3, late day 2. Right now, he's positioned a little bit further behind that, but I think with the testing and everything that's starting to happen, I think people will see that he's not a guy that should be slept on.
Of the 5 Syracuse players that went to the Combine, the one that I think it may be a stretch to get drafted is Elijah Clark at the safety position. What do you make of Elijah, and how likely is it that he'll hear his name called on day 3, or do you think he's more of an undrafted free agent?
I do like Elijah. I know at the pro day yesterday, he seemed like he tweaked his grind a little bit, but he early in the early portion of his drilling, but ended up having no problems and actually looked great. I don't know if you guys saw the catch that he made in drills. That was Yeah, that was amazing. That was after he seemed like he banged himself up a little bit. Unfortunately, I think he's like on that borderline, which stinks. There's a lot of good guys that are on that borderline of could they be, a round 6, round 7, or a UDFA. But the good news, not necessarily the bad news, is that a lot of these UDFA guys are actually making more money than some of the guys drafted in those later rounds with guarantees and everything. Now, it depends if he ends up sticking, if he wants to do, really goes all out in special teams contributions. But I think he's kind of on that borderline of a day 3 UDFA.
You did touch on Marlowe Wax already. There are 2 other guys that didn't get invited to the Combine that I think have a chance to earn a roster spot somewhere, and that's Jackson Meeks and Justin Barron. Both guys, Barron in particular is kind of a Swiss Army knife. Yeah. He's got some versatility to him, and Jackson Meeks obviously had a fantastic year in his 1 year at Syracuse. What do you make of those 2 guys, and do you think either of those 2 guys will end up on rosters next year?
I'll start with Meeks first. I think he's a dog, man. Honestly, even at the Shrine Bowl, he was kind of going back and forth with the cornerbacks. He's got some really strong hands, which I think people kind of take for granted, especially in the red zone. The guy does not drop passes. He's very underrated in that regard. I clocked him at a 4.52 in his 40. This was hand time, so unofficial, which isn't bad speed at all. I think from what I've heard, he can be he's being talked up to as early as round 3 guy and potentially UDFA. He's kind of getting, things all over the place. I think he will end up going on day 3. I think he'll be a solid contributor. Right now, I have him kind of as like a wide receiver 3 on a team with potential to kind of develop into that wide receiver 2 role. But that, remains to be seen. It remains to be seen how he wants to, pursue his career and how he wants to go about it. As for, Barron, I really like him, man. He has a lot of leadership qualities. Throughout the entire pro day, he was kind of the guy, talking, busting on everybody. He was actually the center for McCord during those on-air drills. He just seemed, one of the very lively guys, and that leadership quality, I really believe sticks out and helps. And NFL evaluators really like that. He also didn't really run a poor 40 time either. I think I had him clocked at a 4.58. And as you alluded to, that versatility, he's a Swiss Army knife. And I think, for players that are kind of like tweeners like that, I think not only being, versatile, but also just being a guy who is vocal, a leader, and willing to do whatever it takes to contribute, I think that'll be, I think that'll go far for him. I think he will end up sticking on a roster.
And, just lastly, Thomas, anything else stand out to you, from Pro Day yesterday? Anything else you want to get across to our listeners?
Yeah, Savion Washington, the offensive lineman, he ran a pretty fast 40-yard dash. I had him clocked at a 4.91 on his second try, which would have been actually tied with Armand from Missouri for offensive lineman. I think he did pretty well in his drilling as well. And, I just got to go back to McCord, man. He did some special stuff. Honestly, I have a clip on my personal Twitter of him, backpedaling away from his throw and hitting a ronde on a crossing route on the far side, and he just hit him in stride. So I really think that Kyle McCord should not be slept on the way he is.
Yeah, certainly seems like he can make all the throws. Lastly, Thomas, how can people consume your content? How can they find your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at ThomasCP_NFL. You can find my company on Instagram at The League Winners. We do a lot of player interviews and a lot of practices and things like that. And of course, the website, theleaguewinners.com.
All right, good stuff. Appreciate you coming out. Great analysis, Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for the opportunity. You take care.
All right, Thomas Christopher, owner of The League Winners. And with that, we'll hit a timeout. We'll open up the phone lines for one segment if you want to check in at 315-437-7644. Matt Park coming your way at 1:30. Back after this on ESPN Radio.